Hey, y'all. So, there appears to be a bit of a kerfuffle on the internet regarding the new Jedi Fallen Order reveal trailer, which is super weird, right? People fighting on the internet about Star Wars? Unprecedented. We get all the fresh scoops here, folks. Stick around. The trailer looks pretty neat, in my opinion, and it does what a trailer is supposed to do, I guess. It advertises the product in a way that should get consumers excited about it. That said, a lot of folks noticed one glaring detail about the protagonist. He's a white dude. It turns out that people have some pretty strong opinions about that. So let's have a conversation about representation in the media and have a look at why people tend to have such strong reactions to it. And here we go. So what's the big deal here? As nice as the trailer for Jedi Fallen Order is, it's only about 2.5 minutes long, and it doesn't say much about the game itself, if anything at all. We only have these initial first impressions to go off of. We can't pretend that first impressions don't matter, especially when it comes to presenting products to customers. In marketing, the first impression is the most important impression, and it can make or break the salability of your product to different demographics. Now, I can only offer my point of view here. I'm a queer woman of color who adores science fiction. I can't view things from the viewpoint of a white dude, simply because I am not one. Because of this, I think it would be a good idea to look for someone who can view this situation as a white dude. To help me with that, I'll be using clips from an editorial news video by YouTube games journalist Legacy Killa HD, titled Ubisoft dev, games journalists, trash Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order for generic white male protagonist. Oof, that is a mouthful. I've left a link to the video in the description below, so you can go give it a little watcharoony and make sure I'm not taking anything out of context or making any bad faith arguments. That shit's not productive at all. Am I right or am I right, though? It's pretty firmly on the other side of the aisle from me, and hopefully I'll be able to answer some of the questions posed by the video. So let's take a minute to suss out Legacy's thesis and see what we're getting at here. You can't really elaborate in clickbait titles since you want to kind of grab people as fast as possible. So let's see if we can find a more in-depth description of what this video is about. The first 4 minutes of the video bury the lead a bit by talking about the people involved in the project, the context which the teaser clip was released, and speculating that EA could possibly walk back on its promise to not do the loot box thing with this game. Which, I mean, do any of us really believe that Electronic Arts isn't going to renege on their promise to keep loot boxes out of the single-player experience? We've got our eyes on you, EA, you bunch of punk asses. Anyway, after we get through that intro, we get to the heart of the matter.
Now, you would hope the reaction to this would be, let's wait until we see or hear more about Cal before we actually judge the character, because nobody is going to judge someone for the color of their skin and their gender or even just a few minutes of random story clips, right? Well, if you assume that would be the reaction, you have not been paying attention to how horrible some of these people who claim to be fighting the good fight can be. So yes, this finally brings us to the enormous criticism being thrown at Respawn Entertainment for choosing a quote-unquote generic boring white male protagonist. Yes, a lot of people seem to be angry about this 2 minutes of footage, which really doesn't show much of Cal except for a few random out-of-place story clips, which, as an EA community manager pointed out, the trailer was intended for the casual Star Wars Celebration audience.
Okay, cool. So let's unpack this and break it down. The thesis appears to be saying two things here. The first thing is, some people don't like that the main character is a white man. And the second thing is, criticizing the fact that the main character is a white man is racist and sexist. I can't be 100% certain what Legacy means when he says fighting the good fight, but given the context of the video, I'm going to assume he's talking about people who are against racism and sexism. Now, my first question is, who doesn't like that Cal Kestis is a white man, and what horrible things are they saying? Well, let's take a look at some of the more popular tweets on the subject. I am deeply disappointed in the Fallen Order trailer. Not because the game doesn't excite me, it does, but because the Star Wars franchise doesn't need another young white male Jedi protagonist right now. The Padawan could have been anyone, looked like anyone, and yet. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order looks great, but, and I don't say this often, the protagonist looks like the whitest slice of bread I have ever seen. I don't see any reason why this character can't be a woman or a person of color or anything but the 1000th white man. I'm a huge Star Wars fan and I'm excited for the idea of Fallen Order, but is there any way we can choose who we play? I'm really tired of being in this vast universe where only white people are important Jedi, playable. It's like POCs were barred from space or something. Can't wait to explore the Star Wars universe as the captain of the swim team in a high school slasher film. Okay, listen, I know this is slightly off topic, but hear me out. What if Cal Kestis was the captain of the high school swim team in a slasher film, though? Do, 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 do. Y'all can't tell me that wouldn't be fresh as fuck, though. I'm gonna be Hollywood famous one day, just you watch. I read through a number of tweets about the character design decision, and they seem more, annoyed than anything else. A good number of the people who make this observation seem to be displaying cautious optimism more than anything else. Personally, I wouldn't really call the response enormous, nor would I say that the things these folks are saying are horrible. In fact, the enormous reaction seems to be coming from, well...
And I hope you're happy, Lucasfilm. I hope you're happy. I hope that you now see that you are a bunch of idiots pandering to a bunch of people that will never be satisfied. Instead of pandering to these types of people, why don't you just pander to Star Wars fans?
So let's all take our little SJW tinfoil hats and put them back in the closet with the other stuff that you don't want society seeing and shove it.
There's not enough attention paid to diversity communities. Cool. Awesome. I get it. But every single one of them will say the same thing. We don't want diversity for diversity's sake. I agree. Diversity for diversity's sake is always a bad thing.
There were also a good number of tweets saying that anybody who's criticizing the character design decision is not a real fan of Star Wars. So we've got a nice dose of no true Scotsman going on over there. I'm thinking maybe some people don't quite appreciate the irony of this whole situation. Legacy and a handful of other folks are displaying a lot of empathy for actor Cameron Monaghan and seem to be worried about his feelings toward the reactions to his character.
Let's finally just move on to PC Gamer's very intelligent article titled Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order's protagonist is such a wasted opportunity. As the writer states, there's a rich, weird, silly, pretty awesome range of alien species out there for Star Wars creators to draw from, invented over decades of movies and books and comics and games, and yet this is the character Respawn has chosen to lead Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Seriously, where have I seen this guy before? Oh yeah, Solo, the Star Wars movie nobody asked for that spelled out a backstory nobody needed to know. Fallen Order's protagonist Cal Kestis looks like a knockoff young Solo, even if he's based on actor Cameron Monaghan rather than Alden, I can't say that guy's last name. To quote executive editor Tyler Wilde, they chose someone with the personality of a hotel bathrobe, and PC Gamer doesn't want to say it, but they actually do, which is they don't think a white male protagonist was a smart decision. Later in this article, they continue hitting hard on the character and the acting, saying everything is boring, which I have to say, looking at just 2 minutes of footage, that seems extremely judgmental and disrespectful to the actor.
But when you search on Twitter for Jedi Fallen Order tweets with mentions of Monaghan's name, an overwhelming majority of people are ecstatic that he was chosen for the role. I can see where someone might view the character design criticisms as an attack on the actor, but they're not really. The comments and observations are about the depiction of white dudes in media, not the actor who is portraying the white dude. At the end of the day, Cameron is an employee who's just doing his best. The reaction to this didn't materialize out of nowhere, either. This criticism is a symptom of a larger problem in entertainment, which is a lack of representation for social minorities. Okay, now we can get to the big question. Are the criticisms of Cal Kestis' character design racist and sexist? I can hear all y'all pedants out there opening a new tab so you can find the dictionary definitions of racism and sexism. In fact, let's compare notes. You probably found these ones right here. Now, I didn't complete any sort of higher education or nothing, but I do know that when you want to make compelling arguments, you can't just stop your research at the dictionary. In fact, the dictionary only provides lexical definitions. The lexical definition of a term, also known as the dictionary definition, is the meaning of the term in common usage. As its other name implies, this is the sort of definition one is likely to find in the dictionary. A lexical definition is usually the type expected from a request for definition, and it is generally expected that such a definition will be stated as simply as possible in order to convey information to the widest audience. When the breadth or vagueness of a lexical definition is unacceptable, a precising definition or a stipulative definition is often used. Unfortunately, racism and sexism are not simple matters. Otherwise, they probably would have been solved by now. So in order to dig deeper, we're going to have to look into some precising definitions. A precising definition is a definition that extends the lexical definition of a term for a specific purpose by including additional criteria that narrows down the set of things meeting the definition. Precising definitions are generally used in contexts where vagueness is unacceptable. And you definitely don't want to be vague when you're talking about racism and sexism. Otherwise, it might seem like you're pushing an agenda. This article over at thoughtco.com explains that there are different precising definitions of racism. Additionally, these definitions can be applied to really any kind of ism, including sexism. The definition we're looking for in regards to media representation is systemic racism. And I quote, "Many sociologists describe racism in the U.S. as systemic because the country was founded on racist beliefs that created racist policies and practices. And because that legacy lives today in the racism that courses throughout the entirety of our social system. This means that racism was built into the very foundation of our society, and because of this, it has influenced the development of social institutions, laws, policies, beliefs, media representations, and behaviors and interactions, among many other things. By this definition, the system itself is racist, so effectively addressing racism requires a system-wide approach that leaves nothing unexamined." And that's another good point. Systemic racism and sexism as a whole isn't any one person's fault. Pointing it out isn't an attack on individuals, it's a criticism of the system itself. Again, this isn't any one person's fault. But it is everyone's responsibility because we all participate in this system whether we want to or not. It's super shitty and it sucks, but, here we are. In this Kotaku article from 2009, Minority Report, The Non-White Gamer's Experience, several interviewees of color are asked about how they feel about not being represented as much as white people in games. Swaby, one of the interviewees, wants to know, why can't we make a game with a black character and market to everybody? Of course, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas stands out as the most notable effort in this regard. This game is also 5 years old. This article is from 2009, remember? But what they don't want more of is pretending that race somehow is not an issue when it is one in every other mass medium in this multicultural society. The consumption of white-dominated mass media by a diverse consumer base is a legitimate, serious topic. And if games belong to that equation when the discussion is about their artistic value, or their economic impact, or their cultural relevance, then they also belong in the discussion of the consumption of white-dominated, high-demand mass media by a broadly diverse consumer base. Holding up one's hand to declare it's not an issue will not make it go away. It's because a lot of people haven't been taught it's important, said Fraser, speaking of race and the history of race problems. A lot of people playing games now are young and brought up in areas where everybody gets along, so I don't think they see it as a problem. You have to live the life in the shoes of a person of color to understand where they are coming from. Now, we're going to take a look at some hard numbers. Yay! A 2017 report called Inequality in 900 Popular Films, examining portrayals of gender, race and ethnicity, LGBT, and disability from 2007 to 2016, has all sorts of really neat statistics about representation in the media. For example, this table about the prevalence of character, race, and ethnicity by years shows that in 2016, white characters were represented about 70% of the time in the top 100 grossing films of that year. Black, Latino, Asian, and people coded as Middle Eastern, American Indian, Pacific Islanders, and mixed race were on screen for a combined 30% of the time. This table on character, race, and ethnicity by gender in the top 100 grossing films of 2016 shows that male characters across the board show up about twice as much as female actors. The study further states, and I quote, "At a time of political divisiveness, entertainment has the power to reflect our uncertainties, serve as an escape from our fears, and most importantly, help us envision a different reality. While some of our greatest national challenges arise from a population that continues to diversify across every dimension, popular movies paint a distressing portrait that perpetuates a version of the U.S. that simply no longer exists. We cannot expect that films will heal our political differences, but we can ask that the landscapes of imagination and storytelling on display at the multiplex resemble the audience there to be entertained. By taking inclusion seriously and acting to address it, companies, consumers, and creators can ensure that entertainment moves away from a vision of the past and toward content that resembles the audience of the present." So, gosh, we haven't heard from our pal Legacy Killa HD in a while. He makes an interesting suggestion to solve the diversity problem.
Why are they so scared to make him even somewhat unique, which I honestly don't know what that means? He's supposed to be young and he's a redhead. Does he need a mustache? I mean, I didn't hear this criticism with Iden Versio. Did she need a mustache?
Now, Legacy. Michael. Everyone knows that comical handlebar mustaches are used as disguises, not to stand out in a crowd. It works even better when you hide behind a newspaper with 2 eye holes cut out of it, but that's totally optional. This is Spycraft 101, my friend. Sort yourself out. One of the answers to this problem is actually way simpler than that. Just add more women and people of color. Add trans people, add disabled people, add LGBT plus people. Hire a more diverse group of people into your management teams so they can add these much-needed voices to the landscape of entertainment. Star Wars is slowly becoming one of the most diverse sci-fi universes out there. Its steady growth in the representation of social minorities is setting a bar for the rest of the entertainment industry. And that's fucking great. But that doesn't mean that racism and sexism are over. It means that we need to keep doing the work to equalize representation. Hey y'all, thanks for watching. This was longer than I thought it was going to be, but I have a hard time passing up the opportunity to be academically petty. It's kind of a problem. Special thanks to my donors, patrons, and subscribers. Thank you for believing in me and expressing that belief in the form of monetary compensation. That's very kind of you. If you want to see behind-the-scenes stuff like the director's cut ending of that puppet show early in their video, head over to Patreon and give me $1. Also, come chill with me on Twitch, where you can watch me make a fool of myself while playing video games. Bye!